After 6 years of her constant attacks, I finally confronted her. "Why do you hate me so much?" I demanded. She was drunk, as usual, but for the first time ever, she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Because you remind me of who I used to be before he destroyed me." I thought she meant my husband. I was wrong. The truth about who he really was. It changed everything. The question that haunts me now: how many other women did she try to warn? Hey, this is Storyline Universe, where we share real stories with unexpected twists. If you enjoy the video, make sure to subscribe and give it a like. My name is Sarah. I'm 28 years old, and for the past 6 years, I've been living what most people would call a nightmare disguised as a marriage. Not because of my husband. David has always been patient, loving, everything I thought I wanted. The nightmare came from his mother, Linda. From the moment David first brought me home to meet his family, Linda made it clear I wasn't welcome. Not in the obvious way. She was too smart for that. Instead, she perfected the art of subtle cruelty. The backhanded compliments at family dinners. "Oh, Sarah, that dress is so interesting." David's ex always wore such elegant clothes, the way she'd rearrange our wedding gifts when she visited, moving them to less prominent places. "I just thought they'd look better here, dear." For 6 years, I endured her constant undermining. She'd call David at all hours, always with some emergency that required his immediate attention. A broken faucet. A strange noise in the attic. A sudden panic attack. David would drop everything and rush over, leaving me alone yet again. When I'd suggest maybe she should call a plumber or a doctor instead of her son, she'd look at me with those cold gray eyes and say, "Some of us still believe family comes first." The worst part was that everyone thought I was overreacting. "She's just protective of her son," they'd say. "She'll warm up to you eventually." But I saw what they didn't. The way she'd smile when David wasn't looking. The satisfied gleam in her eyes when she successfully pulled him away from me. It was calculated. Deliberate. By year 3, Linda had developed a serious drinking problem. Or maybe she'd always had one, and I was just noticing it more. The emergency calls became more frequent, more desperate. David would come home exhausted, smelling like her cigarettes in despair. "She's struggling," he'd explain. "She just needs time." Time for what? I wanted to ask. Time to destroy our marriage completely? The drinking made her bolder, meaner. During our 4th Christmas together, she cornered me in the kitchen while I was preparing dinner. She was already 3 glasses deep into a bottle of wine, her words slightly slurred but her intentions crystal clear. "You know he's settling, don't you?" she said, leaning against the counter for support. "David could have had anyone, but you trapped him." "I didn't trap anyone," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "David chose me." She laughed, a bitter sound that made my skin crawl. "Men don't choose, sweetheart. They just take whatever's easiest. You were convenient." That night, I cried myself to sleep while David snored peacefully beside me, completely unaware of his mother's latest attack. I considered leaving, not for the first time. But every time I looked at my husband's kind face, every time he held me and told me he loved me, I convinced myself it would get better. That Linda would eventually accept me, or at least learn to tolerate me. I was naive. Year 5 brought new horrors. Linda started showing up at our house unannounced, always intoxicated, always with some story about how badly I was treating her. She'd cry to David about how I made her feel unwelcome in her own son's home, how I was turning him against his family. David, ever the devoted son, would sit her down and listen patiently while I stood in the doorway, watching my character being assassinated by a woman who barely knew me. She doesn't understand family loyalty, Linda would sob dramatically. Her parents got divorced when she was young. She doesn't know what it means to fight for the people you love. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here was a woman who spent every waking moment trying to destroy her son's marriage, lecturing me about family loyalty. But it was the night of our 5th wedding anniversary that everything changed. David had planned a romantic dinner at home. He'd cooked my favorite meal, lit candles, even bought me a beautiful necklace. We were just sitting down to eat when Linda burst through our front door. David had given her a key years ago, much to my dismay. She was drunk, more drunk than I'd ever seen her. She stumbled into our dining room, still wearing yesterday's clothes, mascara smeared down her cheeks like black tears. "Anniversary dinner?" she slurred, looking at our romantic setup with disgust. "How sweet, how perfectly fake." "Mom, you need to go home," David said gently, standing up from the table. "We can talk tomorrow." "No," she shouted, loud enough that I was sure the neighbors could hear. "No more talking tomorrow. No more pretending everything's fine. She needs to know." "Know what?" I asked, finally finding my voice. "What exactly do I need to know, Linda?" She turned to me then, swaying slightly, her eyes unfocused, but somehow still sharp with malice. "You need to know that you're not special. You're not the first girl he's brought home who thought she could save him. Change him. Make him happy." My heart started racing. David had mentioned a few previous relationships, but nothing serious. Nothing that would warrant this level of venom from his mother. "That's enough," David said firmly, moving toward his mother. "You're drunk. Let me drive you home." "I'm not going anywhere until she understands," Linda snapped, pointing an unsteady finger at me. "You think you know him? You think you know what kind of man you married?" Something in her tone made my blood run cold. This wasn't just alcohol talking, there was something else. Something desperate and terrified hiding behind her cruelty. "What are you trying to say?" I asked quietly. Linda laughed, but there was no humor in it. Only pain. Raw, devastating pain that I'd never seen before. "I'm trying to save you, you stupid girl, just like I tried to save Jessica. And Maria. And the one before her whose name I can't even remember anymore." The room went silent, except for the sound of Linda's labored breathing. David had gone completely still, his face pale in the candlelight. "Mom, stop," he whispered. But she couldn't stop. Whatever dam had been holding back her words for 6 years had finally broken, and everything came pouring out. "You want to know why I hate you?" she asked me, her voice cracking. "It's not because you took my son away, it's because you remind me of who I used to be, young, hopeful, stupid enough to believe that love could fix everything." I felt my knees go weak. "What are you talking about?" Linda's eyes filled with tears. "I'm talking about his father, my husband. The man who spent 23 years slowly destroying every ounce of self-worth I had. The man who made me so desperate to save other women from the same fate that I became the monster instead." The words hit me like a physical blow. I looked at David, expecting him to deny it, to defend his father's memory. Instead, he was staring at the floor, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Dad's been dead for 8 years, he said quietly. "I thought you'd moved on." "Moved on?" Linda's voice rose to a near shriek. "Moved on from watching my husband systematically abuse every woman in his path? Moved on from knowing that my son learned how to charm and manipulate from the best teacher he could have asked for?" The candles flickered in the sudden silence. I felt like I was watching my entire world crumble in real time. "David isn't like that," I said weakly, but even as the words left my mouth, I was remembering things. The way he'd isolated me from my friends over the years. How he always had reasonable explanations for why I shouldn't spend time with people who might question our relationship. The subtle ways he'd made me financially dependent on him. How he'd convinced me to quit my job because he wanted to take care of me. "Isn't he?" Linda asked, looking directly at me. "Tell me, Sarah, when was the last time you made a decision without asking his permission first? When was the last time you saw your college friends, your sister?" My mouth went dry. It had been months, maybe longer. "I've been trying to warn you for 6 years," Linda continued, her voice breaking, "but I did it all wrong. I thought if I made your life miserable enough, you'd leave before he could really sink his claws in. I thought if I was the villain, you wouldn't see him for what he really is until it was too late." She turned to David, and for the first time I saw her as something other than my tormentor. I saw her as a broken woman, terrified for her son's victims. "You promised me you'd gotten help," she whispered to him. "You promised me you were different." David's mask was finally slipping. The patient, loving husband facade cracked, revealing something cold underneath. "I am different," he said, his voice flat. "I married her, didn't I? I'm not going anywhere." And that's when I understood. Linda hadn't been trying to destroy our marriage. She'd been trying to save me from a prison I didn't even know I was in. Her alcoholism, her cruelty, her desperate attempts to pull David away from me, it had all been her twisted way of trying to protect me. "How many others were there?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Linda's face crumpled. 7 that I know of. Jessica lasted 3 years. Maria made it to 4. The others, they were smart enough to run before it got too bad. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. The gentle man I'd fallen in love with was gone, replaced by someone calculating and cold. "The question that haunts me now," I said, my voice growing stronger, "is how many other women did you try to warn?" Linda's answer destroyed me. Every single one, and they all thought I was crazy too. That night, I packed a bag and left. Linda died 3 months later from liver failure, but not before writing me a letter apologizing for the pain she'd caused while trying to save me. In it, she explained everything. Her husband's pattern of abuse, David's childhood exposure to it, the other women who'd escaped, and the ones who hadn't been so lucky. I keep that letter in my purse now, as a reminder that sometimes the people we think are our enemies are actually fighting the hardest to protect us. And sometimes the person sleeping next to us is the one we should fear most. The question that haunts me now, how many other women did she try to warn? And how many of us were too blind to listen?